May 2nd, 1957. Midnight. Hotel Teresa, Harlem. The cigar smoke curled in slow spirals beneath the low ceiling. Red leather booths lined the shadowy walls, and a jazz record, Miles Davis's Round Midnight, played softly in the background. At the back table, beneath a dim gold lamp, sat 5 of the most dangerous men in New York: Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Perfacci, Lucchese. All eyes turned as the door creaked open. Bumpy Johnson stepped in alone. No bodyguards, no weapon. Just his gray fedora, his cane, and the confidence of a man who knew he held the last card. When he walked out 90 minutes later, Harlem still belonged to him. How did one black man keep the Mafia from taking Harlem's heroin trade? What was said in that room that made the 5 families back down? Let's find out. The Streets of Harlem, 1957. By the spring of 1957, Harlem was changing. The jazz clubs were still full. The sidewalks still buzzed with shoeshine boys and hustlers. But something darker was moving in. Heroin. Cheap, pure, and deadly. Sold in glassine envelopes stamped with names like Blue Magic and Harlem Nights. Addicts nodded off in alleyways. Mothers wept behind drawn curtains. The Italians saw an opportunity. The 5 families controlled the ports, the pipelines, the poppy fields. They didn't need Harlem. They needed its veins, its corners, its dealers. And most of all, they needed silence. What they didn't expect was resistance, not from the NYPD, and certainly not from a black man in a 3-piece suit. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster, he was Harlem's firewall. Born in Charleston, South Carolina, Bumpy came to Harlem at age 10, trailing behind an older brother who worked odd jobs and played numbers. By 16, Bumpy was hustling chess for lunch money. By 21, he was running books, and by 30, he was Madam Saint, Clair's right hand, the muscle behind the queen of numbers. But prison had taught him more than street survival. At Sing Sing, Bumpy read Plato, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu. He understood one truth the Mafia forgot. Power isn't taken, it's negotiated. And Harlem wasn't just a territory, it was home. He paid rent for single mothers. He bailed out barbers. When crooked cops shook down black businesses, Bumpy made it stop with a phone call or visit. The streets whispered his name, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Still, even legends get tested. And in 1957, the Italians tested him with the one thing even he couldn't ignore: heroin. Would a boy from Charleston, scarred by the whip of racism, now negotiate with the same empire that called him boy behind closed doors? It started with whispers. A new pipeline was opening from Sicily to Marseille, then straight into New York via the docks in Red Hook. The heroin was purer, cheaper, deadlier, and the Italians had a plan to flood Harlem with it. Vito Genovese, fresh off consolidating his grip on the Mafia, wanted Harlem's distribution routes. The numbers racket had been profitable, but drugs, that was a gold rush. They didn't need Bumpy dead, just compliant. They sent feelers, quiet meetings, indirect suggestions. Then came the envelope. $200,000 in cash, delivered by a crooked congressman with a smile and a veiled threat. "Sign this agreement," the man said, "and you'll get 10% of every bag sold above 110th Street. You won't have to lift a finger. No violence, no war." Bumpy didn't even look at the contract. He slid it back across the table and said 5 words: "Harlem's not for sale, brother." But the Italians weren't used to hearing no, not from politicians, not from judges, and certainly not from a black man. 3 days later, one of Bumpy's lieutenants, Rocco Red Green, was found face down in the Hudson, pockets stuffed with heroin glassines. A message. The next day, Harlem's chief narcotics detective, on Bumpy's payroll for years, was arrested on federal corruption charges. A louder message. Then came the turning point. Word leaked that Genovese had authorized a contract on Bumpy's head. $100,000. No specific killer, no plan. Just an open invitation to any hitman willing to make a name for himself. For most men, that would be the end. Pack your bags, run, or die. But Bumpy didn't flinch. Instead, he sent out a message of his own. Call a meeting. Not in Little Italy, not in the Bronx, in Harlem. My turf, my rules. The Italian bosses were stunned. Carlo Gambino reportedly laughed out loud when he heard the demand. He wants us to come to Harlem, he said. That's like asking the Pope to kneel in a synagogue. But the Pope of Harlem wasn't asking. He was daring. And in May 1957, they came. 5 chairs were reserved at the back room of Hotel Teresa, one for each family. One for the man they came to tame. One for the man they didn't yet understand. What kind of man invites the Mafia to negotiate in his own backyard and expects to win? Hotel Teresa, May 2nd, 1957. The negotiation table, 11:58 p.m. The last of the 5 families' men filed into the back room. The air was thick with cigar smoke, distrust, and silent calculation. Carlo Gambino, sharp-eyed and silent. Joe Bonanno, smooth as glass. Perfacci, all pretense. Lucchese, stone-faced. And at the center, Vito Genovese, the architect of the meeting, flanked by 2 soldiers with tucked pistols and dead stares. Then came Bumpy, gray pinstripe suit, midnight blue tie, cane in one hand, a folded envelope in the other. No backup, no gun, just him and Harlem in his shadow. He didn't sit immediately. He let the silence stretch. "This is my table," Bumpy said, finally placing the envelope at the center. "So let's talk business, but not your business. Ours." Genovese leaned back, unimpressed. "You should be thanking us. We're offering partnership, protection, profit." "Protection," Bumpy chuckled. "From who? The NYPD? I've got half their captains on speed dial. From the feds? You can't even protect yourselves from McClellan's committee." A few men stiffened. Bumpy was poking the bear. But he kept going. "See, I know what you want. Harlem's dope routes, the street soldiers, the addicts. You want us to poison our own so you can count bills from your clubs in Brooklyn. But here's what you forgot. You don't own Harlem. You never have. And if you try to, you'll lose more than money." He opened the envelope and spread out a hand-drawn map. Harlem's 10 key corners, the transit routes, stash houses, policy bank fronts, every pressure point. "Here's my offer," Bumpy said, voice cool as bourbon. "You want to move product through Harlem? Fine. You use my people, my distributors, my streets. You pay a 30% tax. I keep the peace. You get your cut." Bonanno raised an eyebrow. 30%? Bumpy leaned forward. "Or you go back downtown, start a war you can't win, and find out what happens when 125th Street becomes your graveyard." Silence. Then Gambino laughed. Just once, a sharp, surprised bark. "He's serious." Genovese scowled, about to speak, but Bonanno held up a hand. "He's not wrong. A war in Harlem gets messy, gets loud, gets federal." Lucchese nodded. "We can move through the Bronx." Genovese stared at Bumpy. You think you're untouchable? No, Bumpy replied. I know I'm necessary. He stood. Make a choice, gentlemen. Tonight, or the next bag of dope that hits a Harlem block comes with a bullet. By sunrise on May 3rd, the deal was done. The Mafia didn't win. But they didn't lose either. Instead, they adapted. The five families agreed to Bumpy's terms, not out of fear, but out of calculation. A war in Harlem meant attention, headlines, investigations, and bodies. And nobody wanted that kind of heat. So they took the deal. Bumpy's lieutenants would handle distribution. The Italians would supply product laundered through off-site locations in Brooklyn and Queens and get their cut. But in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson became the face of the drug trade and the filter. For the next decade, Harlem didn't become a battlefield. It became a business, tightly controlled, quietly taxed, and fiercely protected. Bumpy kept the chaos out and the profits flowing. But more importantly, he kept the community breathing. He built quiet alliances with churches, funded after-school programs under fake names, and slipped cash to widows and mothers struggling to survive the tide of addiction he couldn't fully stop, but could at least contain. When a rival crew from Philadelphia tried to muscle in through 145th Street, 3 of their men vanished within 48 hours. No noise, no war, just gone. The message was clear. Harlem isn't just turf, it's family. And the Italians, they never tried to take Harlem again. In fact, some began calling Bumpy Il Professore, the professor, because they realized something about him most never did. He wasn't fighting them with guns. He was playing chess, 5 moves ahead. He'd studied them, understood their structure, used their arrogance against them. Because when they walked into that room thinking they were dealing with a street thug, they didn't know they were dealing with a strategist disguised in silk. Bumpy Johnson didn't just protect Harlem from violence, he rewrote the rules of who got to sit at the table. And in doing so, he showed a generation of black leaders, hustlers, and organizers that power isn't always about bloodshed. Sometimes it's about being the smartest man in the room and knowing when to walk away with the win. So the next time someone tells you Bumpy Johnson was just another gangster, remind them he brokered peace with the Mafia and kept Harlem in black hands. Without firing a shot. He didn't just survive their world, he outplayed it. Now let me ask you, if you were Bumpy, would you have taken the deal or burned the whole game down? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe real power doesn't come from fear, it comes from respect. And subscribe, because next week we're telling the story of how Bumpy faced down the National Guard with just one phone call. Remember, in Harlem, the smartest man always walks out alive.